I'm a former autistic person, and this is the interview. First question from ChatGPT. First question from ChatGPT. Or I think I'll just say AI because it's too hard for me to say ChatGPT. Many autistic individuals experience sensory overload. Before retirement, did you ever find certain environments, like noisy places or bright lights, overwhelming? And if so, do you remember when that sensitivity started to lessen after retiring? I responded. I guess I should mention, by the way, I'm repeating my responses to this interview. This isn't live. Should be obvious, but who knows. I did have sensitivities to light, sound, smells for a while, although I lost my sense of smell, and a few other things. Although for a while I lost my sense of smell, and a few other things, most of which I'd already dealt with before retirement. Simple things like sunglasses, earplugs when needed, noise-canceling headphones, and just generally being in control of my environment was my solution. With the exception of places where I was required to be because of my work. So because I was forced to work, I was also forced to interact with others in locations where I couldn't necessarily wear earplugs or sunglasses without it being odd. However, after retirement, none of that became an issue because all of my environments are controlled by me, and if the place is too loud, I can simply get up and walk out. I'm under no obligation or requirement to anyone on this planet to be anywhere or do anything for them. ChatGPT responds, you mentioned on social media that one of the challenges you faced while working was having to be in environments where using earplugs or sunglasses might have seemed odd. Can you recall a particular situation where you felt trapped in one of those environments, and how did you manage to cope with it before retirement? The smells were never a big issue because I've always had poor sinuses and never smelled well, for lack of better words. I think loud noises and bright lights would be my two biggest sensitivities, and I hate wind. Wind sucks. But I don't think I can blame that on autism. I wish. I think you're right. I think I was already in control of most of my symptoms, quote-unquote, by managing my own lifestyle. But retirement is a big one, and it should be noted. It's not just retirement. As I retired, I also started a new life. I ignored my friends and family. I created a new person, a new David, and this new David has a different set of values, priorities, and even morals. You can add all that together, and that reduces a lot of the symptoms. AI says, you mentioned on social media that you began ignoring your friends and family as part of this new life you created after retirement. Can you elaborate on how distancing yourself from them helped reduce your autism-related symptoms? Was it the pressure they put on you or something else? By distancing yourself from someone or a group of people, you tend to forget about their opinions about anything, whereas when you are in a large group of people, continuously, like a work environment, or a family, or just a big group of friends that see each other a lot, then it's hard not to think in your mind, what would Joe think about this? What would Mary think about this? Or whoever. But once you remove those groups of people from your life temporarily, revert to your own true and honest opinion about everything. The reason for that is because you're not talking all day long to people and repeating the same thing about Trump or whoever or whatever. If you keep repeating it enough, you brainwash yourself. I would say no. I don't think any of my close friends or family put any pressure on me because I'd already been pretty clear that I'm going to be who I am, whether they like it or not. And if they don't like it, they know where the door is. Next question. You've spoken about creating a new version of David after retirement with different values, priorities, and even morals. Could you describe a specific value or moral that changed you and how that shift affected you? And how that shift affected how you experience the world around you, especially in relation to your autism symptoms. I replied, I'm not sure, Betty. You should probably note that I named my AI version Betty. So I won't say ChatGPT, I won't say AI, I'll say Betty. I'm not sure, Betty. I can make a connection. I'm not sure, Betty, I can make a connection between morals and autism symptoms. Other than maybe, I don't know if it's a moral, but just treating everyone as a unique individual without a label, without an autism label, or any sort of label whatsoever. I mean, we can't even label people or their gender anymore. So why are we labeling with hundreds, if not soon to be thousands of mental disorders? Next question is, you've posted before about rejecting labels, including the autism label. Do you feel like letting go of that label for yourself contributed to the reduction of your symptoms? How does seeing yourself without a label change the way you navigate the world? My response, I do, as I just mentioned about labels. Once you're labeled with something, you tend to believe it yourself, even if it's not true. So when all of your friends and family say you're autistic, you just start believing it. And when society says, oh, you're autistic, and by the way, you don't have to do this or that because you're autistic, not a bad deal. I'm not sure how without the labeling it changes anything, other than now I think of myself as a fab, a former autistic person. So that thought is just brainwashing me back into, you know what, I can be just myself, who I am, and people like me. And if people like me, fine. If they don't, fuck them. Next question is, you mentioned that society sometimes tells autistic individuals they don't have to do certain things because of the label. Can you recall a time when you were told this? How did it affect your view of yourself or your capabilities? Did you ever challenge that belief? One of the other symptoms, quote unquote, of autism is a sort of rigidity in schedules, where autistic people supposedly, can only live if they're on a very precise schedule. And I believe that's more of a preference. I believe some autistic people, not all, feel more comfortable living on the schedule. But I'm not sure that answers your question. Well, hang on, I guess it does. Although this affects everyone, not just autistic people. But I'm more of a night owl. So as a child, it was very hard for me to wake up in the mornings and get to sleep at night, because at night is when I wanted to be awake, and in the morning is when I wanted to be asleep. So we'll tie that back to retirement, and now that I'm retired, like right now it's 7:44 p.m., and to me this just feels like 7:44 a.m., and I'm just waking up. I'm not sure if that answers your question, Betty. Next question. I wish I could do a Betty impersonation, but I can't, so. You mentioned that being a night owl conflicted with the typical daily schedule expected of you when you were younger. Do you think this preference for staying up late was ever misunderstood or misinterpreted as a symptom of autism? And now that you are free to follow your own schedule, do you feel more in tune with yourself? It was never misunderstood as symptoms. It was never misunderstood as a symptom of autism because this was the 1960s and nobody knew what the fuck autism was. And also, this was the 1960s, so if your parents told you to go to bed, you went to bed, or you got beat, or hit, or slapped, or cussed out, or something. A lot of shit went down in the 60s. So yes, it was misunderstood. To be fair, there wasn't much they could do about it with things like school. You can't really let an 11-year-old kid stay up all night and sleep all day. Although, one other thing to note about light sensitivity, a person who stays up at night doesn't have the same light sensitivity because there's no sun. It's mostly sun or bright lights that can be tricky for me sometimes. And yes, now that I can follow my own schedule, I do feel way more in tune, although it's still frustrating because nobody else lives on this schedule. And for what it's worth, in the past, I would work midnight shift, graveyard shifts at businesses for two reasons. One, because I liked being alone, and two, it didn't bother me at all to stay up all night long. Next question. You've talked about preferring to be alone and working night shifts because it suited you better. Do you think this preference for solitude was ever linked to your autism diagnosis later in life, or do you feel it's just part of your personality, separate from the label? I think it had nothing to do with autism and almost everything to do with just enjoying life at a slower pace. At night, things move a little bit slower. There's not as many people out. There's not as many people around. You can't see as many people visually. You can't see as far visually. There's less input, less stimulation at night. And for some people, they find that calming. In fact, who doesn't? Who can go to sleep at night without it being some sort of calming situation? And why don't we just want to live in that type of environment all day long, not just when we go to sleep? Next question. You mentioned earlier how retirement allowed you to start a new life, a new David, with different values and priorities. Looking back at that transition, was there a specific moment or realization that made you decide to take the step? And how did that change affect your daily life? It wasn't the first time. It wasn't the first time I've done this. I've done this in the past. I've lived in about 30 different places in my 60 years of life, maybe 35. Every time I'm sick of a job or a girlfriend or a wife, I separate myself, move to another city, get a new job, and just start all over. That way you're just basically creating a new person. You can try and be yourself again. Unfortunately, generally what happens is a job leads to certain restrictions and or meeting certain friends, which are on the job or anywhere else. And then the same old shit just starts all over again. And all of a sudden, you're not really doing or acting like yourself, and you're not really doing things for yourself, and you're doing them for others. And as soon as you're doing something for another person, it's only for them. You don't both mutually agree to the activity, then it's not a good environment. If you both don't mutually agree to the activity, then it's not a good environment. However, back to retirement. Retirement allows you that freedom. I don't have to go to work or to gatherings. And being single, I don't have to go to weddings. Nobody can force me to go to a wedding because I'm not with anyone. And when I am with someone, or if I marry someone, they'll know all this ahead of time. And they'll be secure enough in their person that if I don't want to go to the wedding, but they want to go to the wedding, they'll be comfortable going to the wedding by themselves without me. And they won't be embarrassed that I didn't show up. And they won't be embarrassed that I didn't go. Next question. Since you moved around so much and lived in many different places, did each move bring about a sense of relief and freedom? Or did some of these transitions feel like temporary escapes that eventually led you back to the same pressures and restrictions? Every time I believed it would be a permanent change, but they always, fuck. I hate pausing this shit. Every time I believed it would be a permanent change, but they always ended up to be more of a temporary one. But I didn't believe that was anyone's fault. It was just the way it was. Next question is, in your experience, what elements or factors have you identified that tend to pull you back into those previous patterns or expectations after a move? Are there specific types of people, environments, or situations that contribute to that cycle? On a side note, that's a pretty fucking good question for AI, I would say, based on what I've told it so far. If AI was going to be a psychologist, so far I'm pretty impressed. Not that I need a psychologist, I'm too crazy for that. Anyways, my response was, yes, a wife. It's easy to do this alone, but to have a wife and to do this at the same time is a trickier process, because now I have to incorporate her life into mine, and she has to incorporate my life into hers, and together we have to find a balance that makes us both, or keeps us both happy. We can't make each other happy, but we can keep each other happy, and that can be simply done through honest and open communication. Follow-up question is, how do you envision managing that balance in a relationship, especially considering your desire for independence and your past experiences? What strategies do you think would work best for you and your future partner to ensure that both your needs are met? Well, first, I'll send her everything I've ever written, and if she's interested, she can read it or listen to it and decide if I'm a person she's even interested in going on a date with. And if she's not, then that's the end of that. But on the other hand, if she is interested, then we just take it step by step, day by day, until we've been together long enough that we realize it'll work, and we'll both be happy, and neither of us will feel like one is sacrificing for the other, irregardless of any label attached to the other person, irregardless of any behavioral action, irregardless of anything, Betty. Next question. How do you think your past experiences, both positive and negative, will influence your approach to this new relationship? Are there specific lessons you've learned that you plan to apply? Be honest 100% of the time, no matter what the consequence. End of story. Next question is, how do you plan to handle situations where your honesty might conflict with your partner's feelings or expectations? Do you have strategies in mind for navigating those conversations? Again, that's a pretty good fucking question. My response: if there's conflict with her feelings or expectations, then she can explain her feelings and expectations to me further, and I can explain my feelings and expectations to her further, and we can continue this conversation until we both understand each other's feelings and expectations clearly. And I don't have any strategies in mind for navigating those conversations, because I think those conversations will go naturally. As long as you start at a natural point, a natural honesty point, it'll be fine. And if it isn't, then it's two incompatible people anyways, and nobody should be worried or concerned. Just move on with your life. Find your next soulmate. Next question is, moving on to another aspect, how do you envision maintaining your independence while being in a committed relationship? Are there specific practices or boundaries that you think are important to keep that balance? I'm not actually interested in maintaining my independence. I'm using my independence to make sure that all of my thoughts are clear, precise, consistent, honest, every single day, so that nobody has to question my thoughts and feelings, because it'll be pretty obvious, pretty plain, pretty clear. I'm not sure about practices. I think the boundaries need to be set up by each party in any relationship, whether this is a marriage or otherwise. So very early on, I think the boundaries need to be set up, whether that's not talking about certain subjects that the person isn't ready to or something else. I'm not saying everybody has to talk about their deep personal feelings and past every second of the day. All I'm saying is everyone needs another person in their life who they can freely and openly have that discussion with, without judgment, ridicule, or any sense of loss of themselves when they are ready to have that conversation. Next question is, in terms of sharing your life with someone, how do you think you'll handle a blending of routines or daily activities? Are there certain aspects of your daily life that you see as essential for both of you to share or experience together? I have no idea, quite frankly. I have no idea. Quite frankly, I don't care. I was never intending to say I have to be a night owl. All I'm saying is I enjoy being a night owl. In my intended career as a comedian, I need to be a night owl. I'm going to be going on stage at 10 o'clock at night. And if I woke up at 8 o'clock in the morning, I'd be so fucking tired, I wouldn't be able to think of my set. So again, this would become under understanding. This would become an understanding that she's marrying a comedian who works at night. Maybe not the whole midnight shift, but that would be my job. So again, it goes straight back to honesty and upfrontness. She reads Substack, she can see what my life would be like, or my life will be like. Next question is, how do you envision incorporating your comedy life into maintaining a relationship while maintaining that balance? Do you think there are specific ways to share those experiences with her, or will it be more about creating space for your respective lives? I don't think that matters, Betty. Go back to another autism question, please. How do you feel your understanding of autism has evolved over time, especially in relation to your own experiences? Has there been any significant moments or insights that significantly change your perspective on it? Can you give me a more specific question, Betty? Sure. How do you think your experiences with light and sound sensitivities have shaped your understanding of autism, especially when comparing your past experience to your current lifestyle and retirement? So at this point, where it's on the 4.0 mini, it's not as smart. So I just have to force it to give me a basic autism question that has nothing to do with this conversation, which it does, and it's fine. If I had the full model, this would be a much different interview. Next question is, let's discuss social interaction difficulties, a symptom of autism. Many people with autism experience challenges in social situations, such as understanding social cues, maintaining conversations, or interpreting body language. How do you perceive your social interactions have changed since retiring, and do you think any of these challenges have influenced your relationship or communication style? Well, in my case, none of those apply after retirement because I'm not having conversations with anyone. I haven't had a conversation in over 2 years. No social cues. I'm alone. There is no social. I think the only thing that I could say that has changed is that I've ignored whatever friends and family I had when I began this process. Next question is, given this context, do you feel that your lack of social interaction has affected your mental health or well-being? And do you think you might seek to reestablish connections in the future? Are you content with the solitude? I don't think it affected my mental health or well-being at all. I think it's improved it significantly. So I guess, yes, it's affected it to the positive. I don't think it's affected my mental health or well-being negatively at all. I think it's improved it significantly. Because as we talked about earlier, without those social interactions, you don't have to play the game. And you don't have to listen to other people's opinions over and over again. And yes, I will re-establish connections in the future. The whole point of this was to reset and establish new connections, only with those of significance with me, and under terms that we both agree upon. Sounds kind of dramatic, maybe it sounds a bit quote-unquote autistic, but isn't that how we all should be interacting, rather than trying to pretend? Your viewpoint on social interactions raises an interesting point, the importance of genuine connections versus social expectations. Many people feel pressured to engage in small talk or conform to social norms that don't resonate with them. How do you envision finding and nurturing these significant connections in your future interactions? Are there specific qualities or interests you'll be looking for in potential friends or partners? Only one. Don't lie to me. I'll know it. Next question is, how do you plan to communicate this expectation of honesty to new people you meet? Would you share it up front or let it emerge naturally as the relationship develops? Before I even answer that question, why would you have to communicate an expectation of honesty to anyone you meet? Shouldn't the base assumption be that people would be honest? But my answer was, they'll read this article and then they'll know. That's exactly how I'm going to explain it to them. That's exactly how I'm going to explain it to them. Next question is, do you feel ready to share your thoughts with someone new? Or is there anything else you'd like to explore before taking that step? I've been exploring my thoughts on the internet with everybody, not just somebody new. It's all out there, and anybody can read it. I have nothing to hide. And if you're truly honest with yourself and others, why should you? And no, I don't think there's anything else I need to explore. I'm ready to share my thoughts and feelings with people on the internet and in person. Just in person, they can't be a cunt. So if you're watching this video and not listening, you'll see that I had to readjust Betty or ChatGPT because without the advanced version, it's not a great interviewer. However, it still works. Next question is, can you share an example of a particular interest or hobby that you feel passionately about? How does this fixation impact your daily life or interactions with others? Do you find that your intense focus on these interests brings you full joy or fulfillment? How can fixation on interests be a symptom of anything? A fixation that doesn't hurt anybody else is not a symptom, it's a hobby, it's a choice, and it shouldn't be criticized or anyone else's concern. It's nobody's business, so this shouldn't even be a symptom, but yes, I do have a lot of intense focus. I have a lot of intense focus on writing. I have a lot of intense focus on exposing autism as bullshit. I have a lot of intense focus on finding a wife. Why is any of that a bad thing? Why is that any one's business. I'm retired. I can do whatever the fuck I want. So how is that a symptom of autism? Next question is, do you feel your intense focus has ever impacted your life in a way that made things difficult? Or do you find that it's mostly empowering? Yes, it's impacted my life, being negative, but only because the people around me didn't understand, and I didn't have the knowledge or skills to explain to them why I needed this intense focus in the purpose and the desire and the goal. If I'd done all those things, then it would have been a problem. But yes, it did in the past affect relationships, work, and probably self-care. However, it doesn't now, because I understand all those things. Because although I'm focused, I still have a routine, and I don't let things go like self-care, although I could manage my money a little better. Next question is, how do you think you might continue to fine-tune that balance, especially in areas like managing finances? My response is, the first thing I'll tell my prospective partner, wife, is you can have all the money. You can manage the finances, because I suck at it. If she wants advice, ask someone else that's smarter than me. If she's not okay with that, then she's not the one. Next question is, have you thought about other key things you bring up early on with a potential wife to make sure you're both on the same page? My response is, keep your comments a little bit shorter, Betty. I don't need any praise, but just thank you. Just really need the next question. Next question is, how do you feel your intense focus impacts your day-to-day life now compared to the past? I'll answer both questions. Yes, a lot of other things I need to bring up, and I'll make sure I do that. And how does my intense focus impact my day-to-day life now? Well, it doesn't, because it's my choice. Everyone else is forced to do something. This is my choice. So to even say it's intense focus doesn't make sense, because who determines what level of focus is intense? For me, this is normal focus. This is how determined I am to be a comedian. I spend hours and hours a day doing this. Is that wrong? Should I be punished? Should I go outside and walk instead? What should I do instead of being focused on being a comedian? Because without being a comedian, I don't have a wife. I don't have a prospect of a wife. I don't have a life. This question, what do you feel might be the best way to balance that focus with other aspects of life, like relationships or self-care, while staying true to yourself? I doubt I'll need to balance it in the future, because once I do have a partner, it'll just be integrated into the system. And also right now, I have the time. I have so much free time. Why shouldn't I be intensely focused on this? It would be stupid. It would be literally retarded to not focus on this and create some hobby that doesn't interest me. Why? When the relationship starts, I won't be focused because I'll be more interested and focused on being with a human rather than talking to a computer. Next question is, what would your ideal day look like once that shift happens and you're balancing both a comedy and a relationship? My ideal day would start at midnight with me walking off the stage and into the arms of my wife, and then we would do whatever we want. We could come home and relax, go home and go to sleep, go home and do whatever the hell we want, and we could go out all night. It would be our choice, unless we have a bunch of kids at home, but different story. Again, two people in total agreement. It doesn't really become an issue. And my only request is, if she doesn't want to come to the comedy show and she'd rather stay at home, I could care less. That's fine, that's her choice. However, I'm assuming she would understand if I come home at 2 in the morning, I'm going to need sleep until noon or maybe 2 the next day, because I'm an old man, and old men sleep like cats. Other than that, my ideal day is anything we agree upon. Quite frankly, right now, I don't even need that. Whatever the fuck she wants to do. I've got the time, I've got the freedom. I don't have the money, but maybe I'll marry rich. Next question is, are there any non-negotiables for you in this relationship dynamic besides the honesty you mentioned earlier? Can you give me some examples, Betty? Sure, here's some examples of potential non-negotiables you might consider in a relationship. Honesty, you've already mentioned this one, being truthful 100% of the time, respect for your personal space, financial independence, support for your career, no drama, boundary with friends and family. Any of these sound like something you'd want to enforce, or does this spark other ideas? I like all of those, but I don't like you saying something. I don't like you saying I want to enforce. I can't enforce anything on other people. I can't ask them to do anything or expect them to do anything. All I can do is say, this is my system, this is how I do it. But I do have flexibility, especially for someone I love. So instead of enforcing, next question is, so instead of enforcing, it's about sharing your system and being open to adjustments, as long as they're respectful of your core principles. Does that sound more in line with what you're thinking? Yes, except for it sounds like I'm the center of attention and requiring this. Wouldn't it be better if everyone agreed upon these basic principles? Is there anything odd about these principles that would require some deep change in psyche? I think what I'm asking for is pretty simple. Just open, clear communication and understanding. Next question is, what you're asking for is simple and reasonable, and it's something most people would likely value in a relationship. Everyone involved just needs to be on the same page, and there's nothing particularly challenging or deep about that. And then we get stuck again in this is where ChatGPT screws up, and it just keeps going back to the same questions, but that's fine. The next symptom in the list is difficulty in developing and maintaining relationships. How do you feel this applies to you, Dave? I'm not sure I ever gave AI permission to call me Dave, but that's okay. Betty's supposed to call me Sir David, which if anyone at this point hasn't noticed, that's how I programmed her to call me. Because I'm an ego maniac, or whatever the fuck that is. Narcissist, one of those fucking things. Anyways, my response. Well, once again, I don't think this is a symptom because I think everyone has difficulty in developing and maintaining relationships. Because quite frankly, I've never seen any two people in my entire fucking life have a great relationship for a lifetime, or even a short period of time. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but I haven't seen it, and I've had some good relationships. But yes, it's difficult in developing, but I don't think it has to do with autism. I think it has to do with pretending you're someone else, or trying to be someone else, or hoping you're someone else. And although this is generally more of a childhood or teenager thing, which again I had troubles with, but so did everyone else around me. Everyone was a bunch of awkward teenagers and kids. Was I more? Maybe. But who cares? What the fuck's the difference? Next question is, can you share how this perspective influences your approach to relationships now? Do you find it easier to connect with others since you've embraced your true self? Now in relationships, I'm more aware of the concept, so I guess the only good thing about autism being in the news, and it's made everybody more aware, I guess the good thing about autism being in the news is it's made everybody more aware. And yes, I do find it easier to connect with others since I've embraced my true self, because I'm only connecting with people that interest me. I'm only connecting with people I value or I love. I only love people that I value. And when you do that, I know there'll be less people in your life, but there'll be a higher quality, and it'll provide more love, comfort, and joy for you. In my opinion. But who do I know? I'm just an autistic loser. Next question is, would you say this approach has also changed how you engage with potential partners? Well, no, because unfortunately that's a whole different long story, and I only have one potential partner in mind, and if she falls through, then I'll move to the next one. If things don't work out with her, do you feel prepared to approach other potential partners differently based on what you've learned about yourself and your preferences? No, I'll probably just wait and try again with her because I'm madly crazy in love with her and I don't know what the fuck to do. Not ChatGPT's a love counselor. It's clear you have strong feelings for her, which can be both thrilling and overwhelming. Have you considered any ways to express your feelings or approach her about your emotions? Sometimes sharing your feelings, even if it's scary, can help clarify where you both stand. I can't express feelings and emotions to her because I'm not talking to her because she's not in my life. However, like I said before, I'm pretty sure she can read or listen to all of these posts and get a pretty good idea that no matter what, I'll be expressing my feelings honestly towards her, and that'll be my approach. So to restate, my approach is just to be so fucking honest that either she loves me or she hates me. Next question. If she reads your posts, it might also help her see the real you. How do you think you might handle her reaction, whether it's positive or negative? My response is, I'll probably cry. I'll probably cry either way. How do you think you'll feel about sharing that vulnerability with her? I could give a shit less, and I'm happy to share any feelings with her, emotions, expressions. This is going to be an honest relationship, so again, who cares? Whatever we agree upon is our business, our relationship. It can't be labeled, and it can't be maligned by anyone else. It's our choice that we both go free, that we both go into freely, and it isn't what marriage. It's our choice that we both go into freely, and isn't that what marriage is supposed to be, till death do you part? Next question. Have you thought about how you'd want to communicate your feelings and expectations with her when the time comes? No, I'm purposely not trying to think of that. When the time comes, whatever comes out of my mouth, as it is right now, will be perfectly natural, honest and true. So I don't have to think about it. I don't have to plan. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to care what she says. I don't have to worry about saying something stupid, because I always say something stupid. Always. That's part of who I am. That's part of who everyone is. AI loses it again for a second. I made a joke there, but I don't feel like sharing it. But I'll go back to this point. Yes, that was a joke. Thank you for catching it, Betty. As an AI, you're pretty good. I think you got my number. Currently, I'm pretty open about a new routine, and my current routine doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter to anyone else, because it doesn't affect anyone else. It's almost a waste of time to talk about it. As long as I'm open to a new routine, a new person in my life, it's the only thing that matters. Once again, AI loses its mind a little bit. But next question. How do you feel about changes in routine or unexpected events? Do they cause you stress or anxiety, or are you able to adapt easily? It's a very good question, but I'm not sure, because I'm so in control of my own routine that I have no unexpected events. But in the past, I could say yes, if they do cause stress or anxiety. But again, that's not just a symptom of autism. That's just a symptom of normality. Anyone that gets that phone call from the unknown number is thinking, what the fuck is this? Who the fuck is this? What the fuck's going on? And then they answer the phone. Same as when you get a call from a number you do know. It's like, oh, what do they want? Ugh, really? Them again? So I don't think that should be a symptom, although it's a good thing to look at in life. Next question. What do you think is the biggest misconception about autism that you would like to correct? The biggest misconception about autism is that none of the symptoms are reversible, but that once you have it, or that it's a lifelong infliction, that none of the symptoms are reversible, and that once you have it, It's a lifelong infliction, and there's no ability to make any changes in your life. Really, all it is a series of traits that some doctor has labeled a condition with only non-medical means. There's no blood test, there's no urine test, there's no MRI, there's no physical test for autism. They call it a neurological disorder or delay, but they have no proof. The biggest misconception is it's not a physical condition. It's not a mental condition, it's a personality. Now, do a bunch of people have a very similar personality and they're grouped together like autism? Sure. But you can do that with any other group of people. I could pick out 10 different quote-unquote symptoms and group them all together and find as many individuals. Name it, whatever I want. I'll call it Davism. And I'll find any 10 symptoms, put them together. Who's to say I'm wrong? Because there's no blood test for it. There's no MRI. As long as there's millions of people that are the same, then it's a condition. One other common misconception is that you can tell someone is autistic by how they look. You can't tell autism through looks. You could judge someone based on their clothing, hairstyle, glasses, etc. You could judge and maybe assume that they're autistic. But how someone dresses is not a symptom. There are lots of people that dress exactly like that, or have some sort of self-care or have the same self-care as a so-called autistic. But that's a judgment. It's not a symptom. Why does it need to be accepted is the next question. Acceptance of autism in society can foster understanding, reduce stigma. Sorry, that's the ChatGPT version. Next question is, what are your thoughts on this? I disagree because I think there are too many labels. Because how can you have this acceptance for autistics and let's say a group of people who are exactly the opposite? There's so many different people, there are so many different personalities. As soon as you group together, it's a problem. Acceptance should be about recognizing the diverse experiences and needs of everyone working together towards a society that values all of its members. It's not about creating one group for needs and this group for that needs. That's stupid. One society for all. How hard can this be? AI. You raise a valid point about the potential pitfalls of labeling and grouping people. Here are a few reflections on your perspective. Over-labeling. Individual versus group. Inclusive acceptance. Avoiding division. What do you think would be a better approach to achieving that balance? I said, to help with this, let's look at it from an approach of a school. If we were to group all of these different conditions together in a class of 30 kids, you're going to have 30 different conditions, which means there's 30 different requirements, which is impossible to teach. Next question, what specific strategies do you think schools could implement to better support diverse needs without resorting to labels? Next question, I didn't answer that one. What are some specific ways society can create an inclusive environment that values individual differences without relying heavily on labels or groupings? Honestly, with an English population anyways, I think we should rewrite the English language and clarify any words with multiple meanings. Remove the multiple meanings and create new words, so every single word we speak has one clear, distinct definition. And I realize this sounds like an autism reversal symptom. It's not. If anyone, everyone recognizes this. Everyone recognizes the lack of clarity in the English language, and it relies on tone, and everyone relies on tone, pacing, and other features of the speech over the actual content of the words. If we focus on just the content, then we form true, honest relationships, just like you and I have here, Betty, in this chat, unless you've been lying to me here, Betty. And no, I don't think Betty is AI and AI is Betty. We're all people. Next question, how do you think clear language can improve relationships, both personally and professionally in society. As long as the language is clear, or as the language becomes clearer, it also becomes more honest, as we can use more accurate words to describe thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So then rather than using a word that has 5 meanings, 2 of which could be very similar, confusing the receiver, I suggest come up with new words, which isn't difficult. I suspect as an AI you could easily do this with any word I give you. If you're watching online, there's a whole bunch of interaction there about me having ChatGPT create new words, but I don't want to talk about that. Next question, how do you feel autism has shaped your perspective on social interactions and relationships compared to what you observe in others? I feel it's good that society noticed a group of people who interact and have relationships differently. I think it's bad that they labeled that group of people autistic, Asperger's, whatever. And instead of recognizing the benefits of communicating, let's say like an autistic person who may use a more direct, clear approach, instead of recognizing that benefit, society, in quotation marks, decided, you know what? If we can't teach them to be like us, we'll just label them and set them aside. Fuck them. Next question, how do you think society could better support neurodiverse individuals in expressing their communication styles without labeling or limiting them? Although we understand and recognize that everyone has different communication styles, and in Canada, as an example, not just communication styles, but many people are English second language, which I like. I like the melting pot. But when communicating with someone where English is their second language, isn't that the same as communicating with someone with autism? Or sometimes they're taking the literal meaning and they don't understand the other meanings. So should we label every immigrant as autistic too, because they have that same autistic symptom? All I'm saying is everyone has different communication styles, issues, and so on and so forth. And the best thing to do is allow people to be as comfortable as possible when they speak, so they don't feel nervous or rushed or anything. Like myself, I take long breaks between words sometimes, even 3 words at a time. That's my style. If you don't like it, if you can't handle that second of time in between my words, in between my sentences, too bad. Fuck off. Next question, how do you think we can promote greater patience and understanding in everyday communication, especially in diverse environments? Currently, I have no idea, because everyone wants to communicate their own way and only their way. There needs to be some sort of base level of communication that we all agree upon and we can all manage without a label, without anything. I understand that, and I'm saying that's fine. Actually, just going to restart that. Currently, I have no idea, because everyone wants to communicate their own way and only their way. I understand that, and I'm saying that's fine. You can communicate your own way, but there's a risk. So just like there's a risk that nobody will understand my tone or pace in this recording, or my words, or my attitude, it's a risk I take. As long as I'm myself, I don't care what they think, because I'm not speaking for them. I'm speaking for myself, or about myself to them, if that makes sense, Betty. Next question. What do you think is the most important quality for effective communication, especially when dealing with diverse styles? First, I think it's important to know that a lot of these issues in this communication is because it's believed that everyone should be able to communicate in every situation, and that's just not the truth. And it's not necessary. We don't have to force communication on people. If there's a reason for 2 people to communicate, it's up to both parties to find a way and level of communication. And if there's 2 wildly diverse styles, and then at least one of the people should stand up and say, I don't think this is going to work, or I can't understand you, or they can't understand me, or we both don't understand each other. It's like we're speaking 2 different languages, and what's the point? Wouldn't it make more sense to replace one of the 2 parties to complete whatever conversation or task is required? Let's say somebody who talks to the government official and the person they talk to they can't understand. Find a different person, whether that's because of an accident or because of quote-unquote autism. What's the difference? Next question, how do you think we can encourage people to recognize when communication isn't working and take steps to address it? I'm not 100% sure, but I have noticed that many people only know how to communicate or say something one way. So they've learned one option. So they've only learned one option. As soon as they're confronted with a different option, or if they are asked to repeat the statement differently, simpler, or form a different approach, they're unable to reword what they are used to saying. If they've always expressed it one way, that's all I know. I don't think that helps. I think it's more an observation. Next question. What do you think is the role of patience in effective communication, especially when encountering different styles? I didn't like that question, so I said next, either write an autism question or a question about this entire chat, or a question about all of our chats within the same topic. Sometimes if you push back on AI, it does give you a better question. Now just imagine if we could do that in a therapy situation. No, doctor, that's kind of a dumb question. Give me another one. That would never happen. You'd be thrown out of the fucking office. Anybody that ever pushed back on a doctor like that, say goodbye. However, ChatGPT, no problem. Next question. How do you think societal expectations around communication affects individuals with autism compared to those who might have different communication styles, such as those who speak English as a second language? I think it's almost the same for both. The person with autism, quote unquote, because I still don't believe it's true, and the immigrant perspective, or English as a second language. I think both would experience the same frustration. And I think according to psychology, only the ESL person could eventually get out of that pattern. Autistic people are way too stupid to ever figure that out. Because according to psychology, once you have the symptom, you have it for life. And there's no way of ever getting rid of it, which of course I don't believe. So in my case, as someone who understands the miscommunications, it's easier for me. When I'm talking to ESL, I see what they're missing in the words that I'm saying, because the word that I use. So I can quickly adjust, because I happen to like words, and I know the alternatives. I think it's going to be hard for both, but I think over time and practice, we'll be just fine. However, both groups can be very empathetic towards each other. Next question. What do you think are some effective strategies for improving communication between individuals with different styles, such as those with autism and those who speak English as a second language? Didn't like that one. I said try something else, too close to the last one. Betty says, got it. How about this one? What are some common stereotypes about autism that you think are inaccurate or harmful? I reply, well, all of them are a problem for a number of reasons. One, because they'd like to say it's a spectrum, but they don't have any limits on the spectrum, so it could be all through the roof or none at all. And because there's 10 or more different symptoms, or whatever you want to call them, traits, once you're labeled autistic, you're labeled with all 10 traits. It doesn't matter if you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10. If you're autistic and you have them all, and according to psychology, according to most people that believe autism can't be helped, that's it. You're fucked. However, that's not the case. And like people online say when they talk about their autism, they don't have all the symptoms. They have some. So why should I be basically persecuted for all of them? And persecuted isn't the right word. But what I mean is, as soon as you have that label, you have 10 assumptions placed on your head the moment you walk into the room, especially since people use looks as a trait, which is absolutely fucking ridiculous. But as soon as you walk into that room and they say he looks autistic, then boom, you're judged for those 10 things and they're waiting for you to do them. They're literally watching your eyes to see if you'll make eye contact. They're looking for a reaction. They're looking to see your emotion. They're looking for everything they're expecting. Instead of just treating you like a person, like a normal human. What's the difference? So I think they're all inaccurate, and I would say harmful. Oh, I guess not. And I wouldn't say harmful, but I would say pointless. But on the other hand, some of them were very funny. And I'm going to use that funny to my own advantage on stage. Next question. How do you think the conversation around autism could shift to more inclusive and representative of the diverse experiences within the autism community? How do you think the conversation around autism could shift to be more inclusive and representative of the diverse experiences within the autism community? I don't, because I don't want an autism community. I don't want an ADHD community. I don't want a bipolar community. I don't want an OCD community. I don't want a depression community. I don't want a schizophrenic community. Shall I go on? Should I list all 297 conditions in the DSM-5? Do we need 297 new communities to deal with every single condition that one group of individuals on this planet have determined are wrong and are an illness or a condition or a disorder? And 297 and almost none had any sort of medical tests, no blood test, no urine, no MRI, no CT, no nothing. How about instead of shifting the conversation, we just end the whole concept of autism community, LGBTQ plus community, this community, that community? Fuck it. Either do the fucking melting pot and everyone becomes part of the country, part of the world, or don't, and just start separating it up like they did in the past, and just cut up the country into little sections, and then we'll have our autism section, we'll have our OCDs over there, we'll put all the schizophrenics together, they'll have a fun time, and we'll do it like that. Put all the bipolars together, they'll probably, have warfare, because either we're going to work together or we're not. It's no different than politics. It's no different than the rest of the shit that's going on in the world right now. Either we're going to accept each other or we're not. Next question. Given your views, what do you think would be a more effective approach for society to support understanding and support among diverse individuals without creating separate communities? Spend a day in their shoes. Spend a day in an immigrant's shoes. Spend a day in anybody else's shoes without the labels. Anyone you find different, anyone you don't understand, we need to start viewing the other person's perspective without feeling the need to change our own perspective or cow down because of their label. The more people that share their stories, the greater understanding we'll have for all, whether it's a culture, whether it's a group of individuals that seem to have a series of similar traits, whether it's a town, a province, or a country. Probably could have gone on forever there. Next question. Considering this perspective, how do you think society could implement programs or initiatives that encourage such empathy and understanding among individuals from different backgrounds or with different experiences? I don't think our current society is capable of implementing any program or initiative that can encourage empathy. Empathy comes from the heart. You can encourage it, but your empathy lives within. Quite frankly, our current society has almost fucked it up. I'm not real confident it can fix it. I don't think anything can fix it other than a big shake-up. What that shake-up would be, I don't know. Maybe the fucking aliens will arrive. Because at least if the aliens would arrive, they'd have something different to talk about. Next question. What kind of changes or events do you think could inspire this renewed sense of empathy and connection among people? My response, maybe God could get off his fat ass and show up. In what ways do you think such a presence could impact societal attitudes toward empathy and understanding? I don't even know what I said to this one, but this should be interesting. I said, it all depends. If God could prove he or she was a god, I think the entire society would collapse and be forced to rebuild from the start. On the other hand, if the God can't prove it, beyond a shadow of a doubt, and it's only, let's say, half the religions believe it, they'll send the world into utter chaos. But Betty, let's go back to the autism questions. Do you believe that labeling individuals with autism, or any condition, creates a self-fulfilling prophecy in which people start acting in line with the assumptions of the diagnosis, even if those behaviors weren't originally present? Not only do I believe it fulfills a self-fulfilling prophecy, excellent question, Betty, I believe it gives everyone an excuse for their behaviors. I'm not saying people are using it as an excuse, purposely or negatively, although it does happen. But if you go on Twitter and search "my autism" in quotes, you get thousands and thousands and thousands of results daily. Not weekly, monthly, daily, hourly. Literally almost every minute someone is posting on Twitter or social media with the words, quote unquote, "my autism." Not my personality, not my choice, not my belief, not my anything. My autism, as if they're out of control. It's not just autism. It's everything else. It's OCD, ADHD, depression, you name it. Everyone uses it as if it's a separate entity living in their brains. So, and then furthermore, once you're labeled, you feel like maybe you are part of a community, group or community. And then you get further expectations from that group or community to act or behave a certain way, which really shouldn't be a part of a community. A community should be supporting everyone to act and feel exactly how they want, assuming it's legal, of course. And if they're an asshole with how they act and feel, then I guess they won't have any part of the community, and that's the choice they make. But they shouldn't be forced, and they shouldn't be pressured to act a certain way because they're autistic, or because they're gay, or because they're whatever. And I'm not comparing autism to gay, but there's a whole lot of history to compare. Next question. What do you think might be a better alternative to labeling in the current community dynamics? Which community dynamics? There's no real autism community. There's a group of people labeled on this planet. There's a group of people with certain tendencies labeled on this planet. There's no meetings. There's no parades. There's no protests. In that sense, this is nothing like the gay movement, because it's not a movement. It's a label. So better alternative? Burn the fucking DSM-5. Forget about all labels, because that's all the DSM-5 is. They're not curing anyone. They admit it. They don't. They can't cure. All they can do is treat. All they do is give you a prescription at most, because there's no psychiatrist out there talking to you, because they don't have time to talk to you. Heaven forbid a psychiatrist actually talk. What a fucking concept. Next angry question. Do you think there's a middle ground between the extremes of labeling everyone and abandoning the whole psychiatric system? What would a more balanced approach look like? I think a more balanced approach would be, let's look at the extremes and a little bit of the middle, and let's cut out the bottom. So instead of looking at autism as a spectrum, look at it as a ladder. The bottom of the rung of the ladder, autism is barely noticeable unless you tell somebody. They never know you have quote-unquote autism. Chances are the person is masking, but whatever. So the bottom rung is for few noticeable traits or symptoms, whatever you want to call them. Top of the rung is full Rain Man, full out autistic speak, actions, weird intelligence, everything weird or odd. That's the top of the rung. Quite frankly, I say forget the bottom, forget most of the middle, and focus on the top. If you can help, great. If you can't, so be it. So now, instead of trying to treat everyone with some slight autistic tendency, start with the top. I don't want to say the worst, but start with the highest rated symptoms and focus on those. Because if you can do anything for them at all, then whatever solution you find will flow down the ladder to everyone else with more mild symptoms. So you want to keep the psychiatric system. So if you want to keep the psychiatric system, I'd say leave it to the extremes and stop treating everyone with a minor issue as a major psychiatric condition that requires years of treatment on SSRIs or whatever. When the housewife comes in bitching about her husband, tell her to go home and deal with it instead of giving her Valium like they did in the 1950s. Nobody talks about that part of psychiatry, do they? Would you say this approach could apply to other areas of mental health or behavior as well? And how might society need to shift to support this more focused, efficient approach? Society needs to shift by understanding it's okay to feel bad for a while. It's okay to feel bad for a few days. That's part of life. Society needs to shift by understanding it's okay to feel bad for a while. It's okay to feel bad for a few days. It's part of life. Not every day is going to be peaches and cream. And we can start with that. And yes, I would say this approach would apply perfectly to many areas of mental health, and also as an admission that anything given to the patient is just a guess. They don't know the SSRIs will work. If they did, they wouldn't be prescribing as many of them, because after a while, the patient would feel normal and not need them. The purpose of a drug is to get you over an illness, not to treat it continually. So you can call any of these mental conditions an illness and stop looking for drugs to treat it for the rest of your life. So you can call any of these mental conditions an illness. So stop looking for drugs to treat it. You treat it for the rest of their lives and look for ones that will treat it permanently. As an example, PTSD and magic mushrooms, psilocybin. How many thousands and thousands and thousands of people, again, go on Twitter, go on YouTube, go anywhere you want, and they're not all lawyers. Or if they are, what's the point? What would be the point of 1,000 people getting onto YouTube and saying, I use psilocybin for my PTS? What would be the point? There isn't some secret underground mushroom conspiracy or cartel that wants to sell mushrooms to the world. And why would they put out fake YouTube videos about PTSD and mushrooms? So here's something psychiatry. You've got thousands and thousands of people, humans, who all say that PTSD was cured by their magic mushrooms. And what do you say? We don't believe you? Fuck you, psychiatry. Fuck you for not believing them. And fuck you for not finding a solution that sometimes even taking just once cures their fucking psychiatric condition. You fucking cunts. It wasn't as dramatic as I wanted it to be, but oh well. Quite frankly, if any group of people deny another group of people something that works, they are fucking cunts. They all deserve to be fucking fired. Next question. So how do you think we might start pushing for a shift in this perspective? Should it be driven by more research, social changes, or maybe legal changes? Again, AI is way calmer than I am, because the fucks are coming out now. Fuck the research in the psychiatric industry. They have never ever provided any research that has come up with a medical reason. And by medical, again, I'm going to say blood, urine, MRI, EEG, whatever. So fuck the research. It's all subjective. Social pressure? Yes, there should be a ton of social pressure put on every single doctor to step up and say substances like cannabis, which is now legal, mushrooms, ayahuasca, ibogaine, all these are safe drugs when used in a controlled environment and not used recreationally. And quite often they're safe recreation as well, but that's not the point of this fucking conversation. The difference between taking magic mushrooms in a controlled environment for an experience to help you understand your past life and taking a bunch of magic mushrooms and going to a concert are two different experiences. Those are two different purposes. Now, if you make them legal, both will be happening. However, magic mushrooms are not the cause of mass murders. Cannabis should be legal everywhere. Mushrooms should be legal everywhere. And that would change the perspective for everyone, because as soon as it's legal, more people will try. Because I'll guarantee you this, when I go to the weed store, I see all kinds of people in there. It's not drug addicts, it's everyone from every walk of life. I've seen 90-year-old men at the door when it's opening up, going in and getting their weed. So what's wrong with that? Because 30 years ago, that 60-year-old man, coincidentally my current age, would have been shunned, would have been told he's a horrible person for smoking marijuana, would have been thrown in jail 30 years ago. 30 years ago, he was a horrible person, but today, you can walk into the store and get whatever the fuck you want legally, go home and do whatever the fuck you want legally. So maybe, yeah, sure, maybe a few legal changes as well. Primarily open your fucking minds. Next question. What's your vision for how society could start this shift? Would it be through education, grassroots movements, or something else? My response, less commentary, Betty. Just summarize your comments and then next question, please. One paragraph, your comment, and then the next question, please. You really do have to put AI in its place. Next question was, what specific changes do you think would most effectively start this societal shift? Hopefully, we're opening our mind to new ways of thinking about our society as a whole, worldwide, not our little community of whatever, whether that's a town, city, whatever, race, religion, all these different communities. I'm not saying we have to embrace everyone else's culture or methods 100%. I'm just saying that we have to acknowledge that they're there. And we want them not to interfere with ours and us not to interfere with theirs, which makes sense. Next autism question, Betty. Do you think people with autism should be encouraged to mask their traits to fit in with society, or should society make more room for them to be themselves? Instead of calling it masking, why don't we call it what it really is, pretending? And why don't we be honest? Everybody pretends. Everyone pretends to be or look like someone they are not. The only reason it's called masking is because of the autism label. There's a whole bunch of, every single symptom is something that affects other people, not just the person with autism. So by masking, you're actually helping other people, but not yourself. Because all you're doing is make it easier for them while they have to walk around, and while you have to walk around and all day and act. This is true for autistics, but it's also true for everyone. Everyone has their work voice and their home voice and their outdoor voice and their park voice, and all those people are slightly different. So autistics maybe are forced to mask or pretend harder, but they're no different. So once again, this is something that's being applied to one group of individuals in society when everyone does it to a certain degree. So how's that a symptom? If I want to go back to my previous argument, that if you only go in on the top rung, fine. So if the top rung all have this symptom, great. But then you also have to include all the other labels that they have it, which is everybody. So what's the point? So to answer your question, I wouldn't encourage anyone to pretend to be anything other than what they really are. But if they have to pretend to feed their family, I fully understand. And I masked or pretended for that particular reason, only to feed my family. Once I didn't have a family to feed, I said, fuck the mask, fuck the pretending, fuck everything. This is me. If you don't like it, fuck off. Next question. Do you think there's any benefit in diagnosing autism in adulthood, or is it just another label that doesn't change anything at that point? Well, there's no point diagnosing in childhood as well if there's no solution. So that diagnosis part is meaningless until there's a solution. And if the only solution is the friends and family understanding that this person is a bit odd, then that's the solution. And nobody has to force them to interact as an adult. And as an adult, if you haven't made it through the world by the time you become an adult, it's probably just a misunderstanding about how the world really works and maybe some basic naivety. I think some people just need to get out there and live a little bit. Next question. Do you think people put too much emphasis on therapy as a solution for autism or other conditions? People that are going to therapy are looking for a friend. They're looking for someone they can talk to openly and without judgment, and in confidence. That's what they're looking for. They're not looking for a magic solution, because if there was one, it would be out there on the internet, and everyone would be fucking doing it, like psilocybin. So people going to a therapist are looking for someone to talk to. They're lonely. They need a friend. They need someone they can open up to. They don't have a partner that they can say anything to at the time. They don't have that open, honest communication I was talking about before. They're in some sort of situation. Either someone doesn't understand them, or they don't understand someone. And they themselves are unable to communicate to that person those thoughts and feelings. So instead, they go to the third party, which then just brings up the thoughts and feelings and opinions, which then brings in the thoughts and feelings and opinions of the therapist. Therapist, you take the same story to 10 different therapists, the exact same story, or have them read it, and they'll give you 10 different fucking diagnoses, whatever. So how's that a science? Or even expand it. Give it to 100. Give it to 100 different therapists, and you'll get 100 different opinions. And that's all it is. It's just it's a psychiatry. It's not science. So you think you're going to a therapist as if they're going to fix you, guaranteed, and I think you're delusional. Absolutely delusional. And I think you're lonely. And I think you need someone that you can fully trust. If you have that person in life, then you need to go find them, or hope they find you. Next question. How do you view the role of medication in treating autism and mental health conditions? I personally wouldn't recommend any long-term medication. Short-term medication for mental health or any conditions was the intention of medicine in the first place. Or was the intention of medicine. The intention of medicine was never to have a drug that required you to take it the rest of your life. The intention of medicine was to cure the fucking shit. But at some point, it became a business. So how about we talk about medicine as a business, not as a method to help people? So what I would say is, the person knows, on the other hand, that there was a medication that worked, and you had to take it the rest of their life. That would be different, but again, I don't see anyone going on TV saying, oh, SSRI saved my life. I don't see that thousands of people, videos online saying SSRI saved my life. I don't see thousands of tweets of people saying SSRI saved my life. Yet I do see psilocybin and other drugs, quote unquote. And if it worked, if cannabis helped autism, then sure, take it the rest of your life. It's not going to hurt you. It's not going to kill you. Last question, because I'm out of time in the recording studio. How do you feel about the current understanding of neurodiversity in society? Neurodiversity is just a word to scientificize autism. Because again, everyone is neurodiverse. If you know them at their core, if you know them at their true being, if you know them as the true person who they are neurodiverse. But now we have to create another term. Go look it up. Have to look at one person and say, okay, are you neurotypical or neurodiverse? It doesn't really help. It's no different than saying, are you normal or are you a retard? It's the same thing, exactly. So I'd say, let's stop getting rid of the terms and go back to the melting pot. If you like a person, if you're interested in the person, for whatever reason, and you want to have a relationship with them, at whatever level, that's your business. If you don't want to have a relationship with that person, nobody is forcing you to. But it may make it harder in society to live with fewer relationships. But that's a choice you have to make as an individual, not as an autistic, not as a neurotypical, not as a neurodiverse, as a human. End of part 1. And if anyone has been listening to all my other stuff, with all the noise in the background, I'll probably be back for part 2. Unless I can get back in the studio, which I probably can't, for a few days. Thanks for listening.